This video is sponsored by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, build your online presence with Squarespace. Hey everyone, I'm Ace of Clay and welcome to another sculpting video. If you're new here, I'm a sculptor and every week I make a new sculpture. Today I'm sculpting the Mothman, but before we get started, I just want to ask you, if you have a second, please hit that like button down below. It actually does way more than you think. It actually tells the YouTube algorithm that people are enjoying my content and it allows it to be exposed to a broader audience. So it really helps me out. It's just a quick click, and if you got a sec, I would really appreciate it. Now, the Mothman is a cryptid from West Virginia folklore. He is described as a humanoid creature with giant wings and glowing red eyes. I'll be sharing all of his lore with you throughout this entire video, so make sure you stick around for the whole thing so you don't miss any details. And don't forget, Series 3 Hidden World trading cards are available right now at aceofclay.com. The entire collection features 9 brand new cards and 2 of them are chases. This time around, I've also released a collector's guide that features all the cards from Series 1, 2, and 3, so you can check out all of the characters that you have acquired. So again, head on over to aceofclay.com and grab your packs of cards before the series is gone forever. And now, without further ado, let's make the Mothman. Alright, let's get started with Mothman's armature. I've got my wooden base here with the holes drilled for the armature wire. I actually sell these on my website now in a 4-pack with or without pre-drilled holes, so if you want some, be sure to check it out, aceofclay.com. And I also sell this armature wire. This is the 10 gauge. I also sell the smaller 16 gauge as well. Now that I have his skeleton figured out, I'm just adding that 3rd piece of wire there for his neck and then using some 16 gauge wire to tie everything together. Now I'm just going to brush on some bacon bond and start bulking him out with some ultralight. And while I'm doing that, let's get into our Mothman story. In a small town in West Virginia, on a chilly November day in 1966, a group of grave diggers toiled in a cemetery. Their shovels scraped against the earth and the air hung heavy with the scent of freshly turned soil. But then something shifted. A shadow swept across the ground, and their eyes lifted in unison. There, soaring above them, was a massive figure, a brown human being, they later described it. Its wings stretched wide, and its eyes glowed like crimson embers. The gravediggers stood frozen, their breaths caught in their throats. Little did they know that this encounter would ignite a legend that would echo through the ages. Alright, now as you can see with our sculpture here, I baked that ultralight and his armature is nice and cured, and we're starting to add our final layer of clay. This guy is basically going to have a typical skinny male anatomy for the most part, with some exaggerations here and there. He's not going to be completely human, of course, so we're going to sort of take a couple liberties with this. I'm just shaping out the pectoral area and the delts and all the muscles, just trying to lay everything out how it's supposed to be and then blending it in nicely. I thought it would be a little interesting to give him a pretty much, like I said, completely human body, but give him a very unhuman head. You'll see once we get there. Now, your best bet when trying to sculpt human anatomy is to use some sort of reference, whether it's a photo from Google or like you take pictures of yourself. That's the best way to get the muscle structure correct, because if just one little thing is off, there are so many different nuances in the human form that, like I said, if something is a little off, it'll throw off the whole thing. So just make sure that things are in the right spot and you'll be golden. Now, continuing our story, just 3 days later in nearby Point Pleasant, 2 couples sat in a car, their breath visible in the frosty air. The headlights illuminated a creature standing before them, a white-winged being, 6 or 7 feet tall. Its eyes blazed like twin beacons, and its wingspan stretched 10 feet. Roger Scarberry and Stephen Mallet, the eyewitnesses, watched in awe and fear. The Mothman, as they would come to call it, defied gravity. It danced through the night sky, avoiding their car's headlights with uncanny agility. Its flight was swift, perhaps reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour. Yet, when it touched the ground, it stumbled, a clumsy runner, a paradox of grace and awkwardness. Now here we're getting a little more alien-like. I have overstretched his torso a little bit, just elongated things a little bit more, but we're still going to give him a belly button. Now for his legs, we're just going to go with typical muscular male legs. And as you just saw, if you ever have trouble getting your clay to stick to this aluminum wire, just brush on some Bacon Bond and it works great. It's way faster and easier than wire wrapping. When I'm sculpting anatomy like this, I like to block out all the shapes first, just so I can see that everything is in the correct spot before I start blending everything in. And it's always okay if you have to go back and take off some clay. Now let's continue our story. Word spread like wildfire. The local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, printed their accounts. Skeptics scoffed, dismissing it as a bird or a figment of imagination. But more sightings followed, 8 in just 3 days. Volunteer firefighters glimpsed a very large bird with large red eyes. The Mothman became more than a curiosity. It became a harbinger of doom. Now this guy has 2 forewings, but I want to give him some hind wings, so I just had to cut off a little bit of his shoulder so I can add more wire to create those hind wings. And these are going to be smaller, but the same shape and design as the bigger ones. And once my wire is on, I just need to resculpt those shoulders. And the majority of the sculpting process on this guy to make his details are just poking and prodding him with my medium ball stylus. Just getting all these little dents and nooks and crannies just right. And I'm just going to trim a little bit off the top of his neck here, and then we're going to add some more muscles around it to make it a little bit thicker. Now I'm going to make his lower back area and obliques a little more insect-like. We're just going to add some different bumps and valleys and whatnot and just make it look kind of like a bug. Alright, we're going to take a quick break from our video to talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you're a big business, a small business, a freelance designer, or a sculptor like me, Squarespace has everything you need to showcase your brand, sell your products, and more. I've been using Squarespace for over 5 years now, even before they started sponsoring me, and I could not be happier with my experience. Their products are so streamlined and so easy to use that managing my website, aceofclay.com, is truly a breeze. Some of my favorite features include the portfolios and galleries. In my line of work, I have to share my work with the world, and Squarespace's beautiful portfolios allow me to do just that. I have an online shop where I can sell plushes, stickers, prints, sculpting supplies, and more, and Squarespace makes everything so easy, and I'm not kidding when I say that. I can track my inventory, print shipping labels, I get notification when something sells. Everything I need is right there in the platform. You can even sell digital downloads. They really have everything you need to start selling online. And at this day and age, if you're an online business, you've got to have a social media presence, and Squarespace allows you to integrate all of your social media into any page of your website. So if all of this sounds good, head on over to squarespace.com, start a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/aceofclay to save 10% on your purchase of a website or domain using my code aceofclay. Thanks again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. Now back to our sculpture. Alright, I just popped on a couple veins here and there for an added detail, and then we're going to brush the entire surface with a little bit of Bacon Bond and clay softener. This is going to remove fingerprints, and in the areas where I dab it around, add some texture. Now we're going to take a little bit of time and poke in a bunch of tiny pieces of floral wire. Just want to create these little fuzzy areas on this guy, just like a moth. Once all the little hairs are on, it's time to bake him. And once he's baked and cooled down, we can start working on his wings. I'm using some flexible cos clay to make these. I just rolled it through my pasta maker on a pretty thin setting. I cut out the shape that I wanted, and now I'm adding some veins, and then we are going to attach them to our armature wire with a little bit of Bacon Bond. At this point, I'm not too worried about what the back of them looks like, because later on I'm going to bake him again, and then I'm going to come back and fill in all of those gaps that we've left with some more clay. The pre-baking will allow me to do that without destroying any of the front. Now let's just repeat that process again 3 more times for the rest of his wings, and let's continue our story. To this day, the Mothman remains elusive. Some attribute it to migratory birds or herons, but the legend persists. Point Pleasant erected a statue in its honor, a silent sentinel overlooking the river. Whether a messenger of fate or a figment of our collective imagination, the Mothman haunts our dreams and stirs our primal fears. So the whole point of the Mothman is that if you see him, it means something bad's gonna happen, so you don't want to see him. Every time he was spotted, a tragedy struck. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't know too much about this guy, but I know a lot of you love him, and that's the main reason why I wanted to make him this week. And because he's a cool, creepy character, and I'm all about cool, creepy characters. Now to finish off his wings, I'm just smoothing things out with some Bacon Bond and clay softener. And as you can see, I didn't give him arms. His arms just sort of form into those 4 wings up there, and I think that looks pretty cool. And just like that, his body's done. Let's start working on his head. I covered a ball of aluminum foil in some clay, and I'm going to start shaping out his details, starting with 2 big bug eyes. I want his face to be very insect-like. I don't want it to look human at all. I think that's going to be a nice contrast to the very human-looking body. The more unsettling, the better, I think. After putting on some eyelids, we're going to sculpt his mouth. This is going to be a vertical mouth with a coiled tubular proboscis, which is that long, coiled, sort of tongue-looking thing that some moths have. And of course, we're going to use our super poker to give him a nice fuzzy texture. Now I filled the anchor hole in the back of his head with some Bacon Bond, and I pressed it onto that wire, and we're going to connect the head to the body with some more clay and Bacon Bond. Blending uncured clay in with cured clay can be a little tricky, but if you're patient, it will work just fine. At the very end, once you've blended it with your fingertips and tools as much as you possibly can, brush on some clay softener and Bacon Bond and it'll blend even more. Now to create his coiled tubular proboscis, I rolled in some floral wire inside some cos clay, and I'm coiling it up and attaching it to his mouth like so. Of course, with some more bacon bond. I thought the addition of a coiled tubular proboscis was a nice detail. I wish I had one. Now let's go ahead and create his antennas. Now I'm just going to pre-poke the holes for his antennas with a pin tool and then stick those in with a little bit of bacon bond. And then once they're in, we're going to go ahead and brush everything with clay softener, get him nice and smooth and ready for another bake. And once he's baked and cooled down, as you can see, the back of his wings look very unfinished. So we're going to go in with some more cos clay and fill in all of those gaps and make them look much better. I couldn't leave them like this. Alright, now he's ready for one last bake. And once he's baked and cooled down, it's time for paint. I'm going to start by airbrushing his red eyes. And then we're going to go in and give him a nice black base coat. I told myself that I'm not buying a proper airbrush setup until I know that I'm going to use my airbrush regularly, because I have a horrible habit of buying the supplies for so many different things and only using them once. Like when I wired LEDs once. I have all the equipment and soldering tools for that, and I don't use it. So now that I know that I'm going to be using my airbrush pretty much regularly, I'll invest in a good cove for it. Now I'm just going in, and I covered his eyes with some clay just to block the paint from hitting it, because I want to paint his face black too. And as you can see there, I sort of went around and added some dots to his wings and highlighted some areas. And then we're going to take the clay off. This did not work very well. There is clay that's made specifically for this purpose. Polymer clay is not a good option. I ended up having to paint his eyes again with a brush, which defeated the purpose of airbrushing them in the first place, but that's okay. Now I'm going to go in with a fine paintbrush and a lighter shade of brown, and we're going to brush on a couple highlights and details all over this guy. Once I've got the first round of highlights on, I'm going to lighten my brown a little bit more and add some more on top of them. They look really bad like this, but trust the process. We're going to be airbrushing over them, and everything's going to blend and look nice and smooth in the end. Now this guy is basically just like a black shadow, and I want to, of course, keep him completely black like this, but I do want to add a little something special to him as well. So we're going to add some details here. We're going to outline all of these veins, and we're going to airbrush on some purple and green later, and even some glitter. Yes, glitter. Now we're just going to go in with the airbrush again, and using a medium shadow tone, calm down some of those highlights that I brushed on. After some more highlights, we're going to sharpen things with some more black. Now for the fun part. I am carefully airbrushing on a little bit of purple here and there just to give him an otherworldly glow. This part was kind of stressful because the whole time I was thinking, please don't spatter, please don't spatter. I want it nice and smooth. If this thing spatters, I've ruined it and I have to start over. Now from an upward angle, I'm airbrushing on some green. This is going to catch all of the upper areas of this guy's body, like his shoulders and then down his chest. I thought this looked really cool. And then I thinned out some folk art dragonfly glaze and I sprayed it all over this guy and forgot to hit record, which is amazing. But the whole time I was doing it, you couldn't really see the glitter going on anyway, so that's okay. Now we're just gonna brush his nice premium Ace of Clay base black, stick him on, and say it with me. And he's done! My sculpture of Mothman is complete. Let me know what you think of him in the comments. I am so happy with how this thing turned out, and I really didn't expect to enjoy the process as much as I did, because anything with wings I just normally don't want to make. But I'm glad I made this one. He's got like mothy wings. I think I just don't like making dragon wings. Like ever since I made that dragon 5 years ago, that giraffe to dragon sculpture, I just never wanted to make dragon wings again. So that scarred me, but I'm glad we made Mothman, and I really hope you like him. So let me know in the comments what you think. And as always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok at Ace of Clay, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.